So Wicked, obviously a play is different than a film, of course.
For sure.
Galinda's character is pivotal because the audience has to be like annoyed with her, upset with her behavior, not enough with her turned off, but also she has to push it or you won't buy the transformation. What was the challenge of crafting Galinda's character for that?
I think that's a great question, and honestly, it's so funny. Last night we were at a party. We had like sort of an orphan Valentine party, and we all started talking about, are you Glinda, are you Elphaba? And I was like, I'm definitely Elphaba. And all my friends were like, you're 100% Glinda. Like, what are you talking about? And I think for me, I actually felt more comfortable writing for Elphaba, and Winnie Holzman, who's the greatest of all time, I can't wait for you to talk to her. She was so good at writing Glinda. I mean, she was great at writing everything, but she just had this very specific line on Glinda, and it was amazing. And for me, what I tried to contribute to the Glinda stuff was just that feeling of a sense of complicity. Like, I remember coming up with the idea that she had to light the effigy on fire, because originally it was just like somebody lit the effigy and she was just standing there, and I was like, no, you have to make her light that fire, because you have to make her complicit in order to really, as you say, care about her journey and her transformation.
Obviously, the ballroom scene is a critical scene because Elphaba goes through a lot. She thinks she's going to be accepted.
I know.
She's rejected, but actually finally makes a connection and a friend.
Yeah.
What was your process of that scene? Because everything wrote on that scene, actually, I think, for the film.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, it's so funny. I can't watch that scene. I've seen the movie 600 times. I can't watch that scene without explosively crying. And I think for me, it's when Cynthia, who just gave so much humanity to this character and so much rawness and emotion to this character, when she walks in with that hope in her face, and she thinks she's going to have a really good night, and then the minute she sees what's going on, she realizes the whole thing was a setup. I can't watch it. It's so painful to me. So I think, honestly, that scene, we wrote it pretty simply, and yet in the finding of it, I have to give credit to the girls, to Jon M, to alicebrooks, the incredible DP. I think that's where they really found those moments, was in them doing it all together, and that incredible alchemy between Cynthia and Ariana, the way that they worked with each other emotionally, and they didn't prepare for that in the same way that, you rehearse things to death sometimes so that you can nail them, and Ariana didn't learn the choreography because she wanted to really be copying Cynthia in the moment. They only did a few takes, and all of that emotion that you see was really real. It was like actually happening, and it wasn't planned. So to me, I have to give credit to the rest of the team for that.
Now,
one.
obviously, you're setting up the great musical numbers because the popular song would not have worked if you didn't have the ballroom scene.
That's a great point.
When you were writing, were you thinking about that? We have to keep the drama going, but we have to set up the great musical numbers.
We were constantly thinking about the music, and I had the good fortune of doing 158 hours of Zooms with Winnie Holzman, Stephen Schwartz, and Jon M before we ever even put pen to paper, which was like the greatest masterclass of all time. I had the time of my life. But, Stephen is so brilliant, and watching the way that his songs actually tell the entire story was really incredible, and realizing that we have to get the characters emotionally to a place at the beginning of the song that the song itself will keep telling the story. And so one of the things I tried to do is anywhere that a lyric gave me chills, I wanted to make sure, did we have the character do something before that made that lyric really land? So we constantly were trying to bolster the emotion of the music by making sure that if we added anything that wasn't in the play, it was in the service of that.
Well, Dancing Through Life is one of my favorite musicals. Would not have worked if you didn't have the Cynthia and Jonathan Bailey scene previously, setting up that real, like their views that he's just a partier and she's not.
Exactly. Oh, Dancing Through Life. Jonathan Bailey, the star. Here's
All right, so our last question. Obviously, the end was so dramatic between Cynthia and Ariana. What were your views when you saw their performance of your scripted scene of their final resolution to their relationship for the film?
Yeah, I mean, you almost as a writer never get a moment where somebody realizes a scene that you've written to that degree of expertise. Like, I mean, the first time I saw it, I missed the majority of it because I was crying so hard that I couldn't actually see the screen. The second time I saw it was when I really, really enjoyed it because I was actually able to see through my tears to watch the scene. And I think it was absolutely extraordinary the way that they teased out the very last note, because that wasn't in the play. Her ability to fly around was special to the movie. And we wanted you to touch base with some of the other characters so that you would remember where you were with them, so that, going into the second movie, you know where you are with everybody. And just the fact that that note is coming and we refuse to give it to you is like, ugh. And then, Jon M actually deserves the credit for that incredible moment where she jumped out of the window and it breaks and she just falls, because originally she crashed out of the window and she flew. And we just sort of, he knew something wasn't quite there. And so he came up with the idea with Alice Brooks of The Falling. And then I think Jon had the idea to have her reach out and realize it was her former self that was the one that was going to save her. Was like, I have to save that little girl. It's not about me, it's about her. And that was, I mean, I get chills talking about it. But go jonmchu.
All right, so the whole movie really hinges on Elphaba and Glinda's relationship.
That's true.
And we know the musical numbers would not have worked if you didn't pull that off. What were the biggest...
We're so grateful that we got the two most amazing women on the planet to play those parts.
So what was the challenge for Glinda specifically? We had to kind of be annoyed with her for a long time, disappointed in her, but you had to also push it far enough so the redemption meant something.
She has somewhere to go. You know, she has a lot to learn. I think they actually both have something to learn, but Glinda has a lot to learn. And it's her friendship with Elphaba that's going to teach her, you know, a lot of hard truths, and it's going to bring her to her true self. It's going to reveal her true destiny. So yeah, it's she's human.
Everything really rides on the ballroom scene. If the audience doesn't buy that scene, the film really doesn't work. What were the challenges in creating that scene, creating that, finally when they came together?
Well, interestingly, the writing of that scene is very much how it's written on stage. The difference is how Jon chose to shoot it, jonmchu, the amazing jonmchu, but also those two women, Ariana and Cynthia, what they brought emotionally just brought it to another level. And they were so naked and raw in that scene, and I think you can't help but be moved.
So, and what are you most excited about for the audience to see in the next film, without giving away anything?
I'm just excited because there's a lot of new stuff in the next film, so I'm excited to feel people's reactions, and I just can't wait.
The whole relationship of the movie is Elphaba, and Glinda. The movie would not work if you didn't actually build a dramatic relationship.
Yeah.
What were the biggest challenges in creating their relationship so we can accept and enjoy the musical numbers?
Well, one was finding them. Who was the right perfect Elphaba? Who was the right Glinda? They never did a chemistry read together, so we never knew. We had done chemistry with other people, but I don't know what was wrong with me, but I never paired them. And once I knew that Cynthia was Elphaba and Glinda was Glinda, like there was no other choice, and I was like, oh, I hope they get along. And they came to my house 6 months after we hired them, and it was during the COVID time, so we were in lockdown. And Stephen Schwartz and Winnie was there, and they played the piano. He played the piano and played For Good, and they sang there for the first time, and it was so magical. I knew that their relationship, even though it was beginning there, that it was already these two titans of their industries sharing in the new beginning. And I thought that if the camera could capture that, then we had a movie.
Everything rides on the ballroom scene.
Yes, absolutely.
Really everything rides, and it's
Absolutely,
also very silent in a lot of ways, which I love.
Yeah.
What was the process for you trying to deliver that? Because that was the critical scene that sets up the second half of the film.
Well, I always found the show very moving in that moment, even though they're sort of plays as a joke. It's like a funny dance. But when we started to, in the reality of a movie and having your audience buy into it, and the way we were looking at Elphaba, what are her moves, that she actually does have pride in how she moves. When in our rehearsals with Christopher Scott and our team, Comfort and Cynthia together, they found these moves that felt very personal to Cynthia herself. And with Ari, they created this sort of silent moment, and we didn't know it could survive. I mean, in rehearsals, it was 15 minutes long.
Wow.
And but it was so moving. Like it was very compelling that in a giant musical number to have that pause and silence and space it was going to be critical to how this movie played out, more than even how the show uses it.
One musical number question, we'll let you go.
Yes.
The Dancing Through Life is my favorite number.
Yes,
How was it, though, doing on practical sets, giving your actors some space to actually sing live on a real set?
Yeah, it was nuts. I mean, you have to have actors who are game, and they're singing live, and they're dancing, jumping up on desks. You have an amazing dance team, and then you have to have your production design to be able to design a giant spinning bookcase. You have to have the means to be able to do that. Then you have to have costume designers who understand how the shoes need to be so that they aren't slipping around everywhere. And then you have to have the rehearsals. And before you've ever built anything, they have to build sort of default things so that you know the spacing and the timing. And we all work together to create. So it's very much a composite of all of our vision together in a way.
Wicked. We're going to jump into the opening scene. I felt there was two things that are really important in the opening scene. You had to set up the musical, obviously, but the underlying emotional resonance also was very important, and especially when Galinda burned, an effigy.
Effigy, yep.
Yeah. So, what was your process when you were shooting? They trying to capture. You have to establish the fun of the musical, of course, but also the grounded emotionality.
The opening number has always been a challenging scene because this was my third musical in a row, fourth if you, it's two parts. But it's a challenging opening number because it is not like most opening numbers, right? Where you introduce all the characters and you bring them right into that kind of world. This is really a prologue, and an epilogue. If you've seen the stage show, it's bookended by Munchkinland of Glinda in Munchkinland. So No One Mourns the Wicked is just really tricky. It's a very sad song, and it's very confusing, and you have to give the audience so much information, and if they don't know The Wizard of Oz, it's even more confusing. And so there are all these pieces that you really need to understand very quickly, and there's that emotional moment with the burning effigy, but what is this effigy? Who is this person that she's lighting a torch? And you don't know all of that. And some of it was found in editing in terms of doing the flashbacks, or the flashbacks between the women. But the flashbacks to her, to introducing Elphaba as her younger, as young Elphaba, was always there, and introducing the bullying. So it's just a lot of information to capture really quickly. Plus, you also want to feel like immersive, and you're in this world of Oz, and the colorful tulips, and the yellow brick road, and this pink bubble. And so we're introducing iconography that many people know through The Wizard of Oz, and so there's layer upon layer, and it's really tricky to figure out how to tell that story. And then you add choreography in, which there's the musical, the stage show doesn't have that much dancing in it, but I mean, we just were next door watching that opening number, and there's this high angle shot that I always forget about, but we had the camera up on a descender rig way up high, doing this bird's eye shot, and you see the shadows of these dancers, and it's going around the effigy. You see the shadows on the floor of the yellow brick road, and I think it's just this really powerful moment in the whole piece.
Yeah. Now, one of the funnest sequences was Dancing Through Life, but it must have also been a challenge. You've got moving staircases. You've got Jonathan Bailey, who has to land on a book while singing so he stays in focus. What went into creating that wonderful sequence?
That was so we brought our Steadicam operator on 10 weeks for 10 weeks of prep. I had 18, and he came on around 10 weeks because I wanted him to start learning the choreography. And Dancing Through Life was our first big number we did. And it was in January. We started right before Christmas, and then we broke for Christmas, and then this was really our first thing up after Christmas. And it was it was very well planned out in terms of how we were moving the Steadicam through that space. We also used the Unreal Engine to pre-visualize that space a little bit and light that space because it was our first setup. We didn't have a lot of time in the space before we started shooting. And Jon Chu's wife had a baby on one of the days, so he also wasn't on set. So Chris Scott and I had to take over directing, our choreographer. So it was Jonathan Bailey's first day on set too, I think. I mean, it was a lot going on for us, but it's one of my favorite numbers, and I love his charisma. I love that set, and I love the way we captured it, and the flowing camera, and the movement, and introducing the way we introduce Fiyero and Glinda as becoming a unit as we circle around them.
Yeah.
I did talk to Jon Chu and Dana Fox and Winnie Holzman. They all landed on the ballroom scene as they felt the scene that really, if you didn't get it right, the movie does kind of fall apart. What were the challenges? Because there's so much going on there. It starts off fun, then Elphaba is again shunned, but then reconciled. What went through the process of creating so many different tones and moods within that one critical sequence?
During prep, John and I discussed that the Osdas Ballroom was the heart of the movie. That we live in this huge epic world of Oz, but really the story is about these two friends. And he asked me during prep what my goal for the movie was, and I said it would be the greatest love story ever told between these two women, these two best friends, and this is where they fall in love with each other. And so you do have to get it right, and it's the closest to anything that I have shot that is as close to live theater as possible. We had John wanted to shoot long interrupted takes, and he wanted to shoot Elphaba's close-up first because he wanted her to walk in to the Osdas Ballroom for the first time without a rehearsal and come in and feel everyone laughing at her and pointing at her, and what does it feel like to be looked at, and her feel that raw emotion. And so we're spinning around her in this 8-minute long Steadicam shot, and it was choreography between lighting. We had 500 live lighting cues, and focus, because the focus puller didn't have a rehearsal, and the camera's constantly moving, and we're wide open on our lens. It's a very shallow depth of field, and our focus puller Lewis doesn't pull off the monitor. He pulls right next to camera, and so he's spinning around while Steadicam's going around 360 degrees, never losing balance and never getting dizzy as we're going. And then Kerstein feeling what the performance is, because we'd only seen one dance rehearsal months before. We had never, and we had recorded it on our iPhones, and so we could watch it and understand. But then you do it live, and things change. And Kerstein had to understand what that emotion was, the storytelling of what we wanted to do. And there are pauses, and when there's pauses, he needed to know when to stop, and he needed to know when to push in. And that 360 ends in Elphaba crying and Ariana wiping the tear from her face. And in the stage show, she never cries. In the script, Elphaba never cries. And it just happened, right? She felt all that emotion. Cynthiaerivo felt all the emotion of that scene, and that moment happened. And that is the heart. That is the heart of the movie. It is these two women becoming friends.
Ariana and Cynthia's, that shot where they reconcile is my favorite shot of the film, because it carries I think it really carries the movie. All right, so then obviously the end scene, a lot going on too, because they're fighting.
Yes.
This all starts with a fighting, but then again reconciling, where they connect. What was your thought process? Tonally, there was a lot of shifts, a lot of things going on in that final tower scene.
Yeah, so Defying Gravity, this is their big breakup, right? They don't know if they will ever see each other again, and Elphaba invites her to go on this journey with her, and Glinda doesn't have the courage to do it. And Elphaba has to find her power alone. She has to take that leap of faith and know she can fly, and she doesn't have her best friend with her anymore. And it's sad and tragic, and that scene is 3 sets. We had the lower attic where they walk in from the balloon chase, where they're fighting, and then they go up the stairs, and the set went all the way up to the ceiling. And as they walk up these rickety stairs to the upper attic, and the upper attic is the second set, and then we had a third set, which is part of the interior and the balcony for the flying, and we shot this over the course of many months, and in order, but still to keep track and know what you're building towards is always a challenge.
That last moment together where they break up, but they love each other and they understand why they can't be together, I thought it was the best captured moment, one of the best captured moments for you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's all the unspoken, right? And so finding, I have always said this movie is about their close-ups, and we did months and months and months of testing just close-ups and each one looks different on different lenses, and how do they connect? And we break the fourth wall all the time, where they look right in the lens at each other. But those close-ups where the sun is setting and they're standing in the window, and we did that's a 360-degree shot. There's many 360-degree shots. That's part of our camera language throughout Wicked. And that moment where they just look at each other and that's it.
So you recommend for all the cinematographers always cast Cynthia and Ariana together for whatever movie you want to do in the future?
Yes, and also that they're just the most wonderful, delightful human beings on the planet. And making Wicked was the best, because it was like making a student film on a massive, massive scale, where everyone was there and so passionate about what they were doing, and the crew. It was this beautiful, beautiful, cohesive, wonderful, collaborative world that we got to live in.
The shoot was about 180 days?
155.
55. That's a rare thing where you get to bond with your cast and crew for so long.
Well, we all move, right? You all move your lives to London. Yeah. We were, all the Americans moved their lives to London. And so you're suddenly have uprooted your life, and you're making a special movie, but and you're not in the rhythm of your traditional life. And I moved my whole family to London, and Jon M moved his whole family to London, and then we're making this movie, and our entire focus for that 12 months was just the film.
Okay, so we'll jump right in. Opening sequence, the prologue. You have to establish as an editor the wonderful musical tone of the movie, but the really dark, emotional underlying thing, especially when Ariana lights, what was the process of balancing those two in that opening sequence to set up the emotional part, but as well as the fun musical part?
Yeah, it was really challenging because, No One Mourns the Wicked is not a banger number. It's really dark. It's basically a mob burning an effigy, and they're really angry at somebody who you don't know who they are. And so balancing that when you have a musical that has a lot of different tones, you have melodrama, you have comedy, you have fantasy, but to start something that's really dark and emotional at the top of a movie, it takes a lot of finesse. And so it was that sequence took us the longest out of the entire process. We were constantly recutting that number to make it feel balanced with the emotion of what was going on with Ari. And so ultimately, watching what was happening on Ari's face, and happening with Glinda, giving you just a little touch of like, oh, there's something going on with Glinda the Good that we've never seen before. You have the MGM musical, and she's so bright and airy and wonderful and whimsical. Our Glinda was going to be more nuanced, because it's going to be grounded. It was going to be emotional, and to sort of just touch upon that and to be brave with that. When we had other versions of Glinda where she was being, you wouldn't see those cracks at all. She was sort of much more sort of the Glinda of popular. And so to be able to have those moments, and then you burn that effigy, and then suddenly that Glinda's back, and she's like back to being the sort of popular, joyful Glinda, and she's like, popping her bubble and saying, "What? I couldn't hear you." And then, so that took a lot of balancing, a lot of sort of exploration about what that was going to feel like.
And the popular sequence is great because, again, Ariana, I thought, had the most difficult role because we can't hate her that much. But at the same time, she has to be dark and mean.
She's a mean girl.
Mean girl. So for you in the editing the tone, was there you had to focus challenges with that, especially in the popular song, where you got to show that she's kind of mean but not unredeemable?
Yeah, it was. Again, we did have different versions of that performance that we could have, that was more mean or too sweet, and trying to find that balance. And sometimes Glinda bullying in the classroom for the first time when she's seeing Dylan in there and her little sort of tit for tat with Elphaba, like how mean can she be there? And so there was definitely some tweaking of that performance. The calibration is really important when you have somebody as good as Cynthia or Ari who is giving you a range of performance. And so you're like, okay, can Elphaba be this cold, or can she have a spark behind those eyes? Those little things, those little nuances. Popular was funny because that was some of the first footage that started coming into the editorial. And so those dorm room scenes was the first time I was seeing Cynthia, who I've seen before in other films. I had never really seen Ari, so to see her and her footage was a bit of a relief, because I was seeing, Glinda come alive, and there was also this sort of like transatlantic sort of spirit about her that was very a throwback. It reminded me of films like Pillow Talk, or there was something very classic about that. But again, there was also a range. So we, calibrating, how mean she was going to be, or how sweet was, you had to find that over the course of the film.
Everything. I talked to Jon Chu, and everyone I talked to from the film says the same thing. Everything rides on the ballroom scene. The film hinges on that, getting that right. It opens great with Eva coming in, feeling like she's going to be happy, like accepted, destroyed, and then that great silent moment between the two of them. What was the process of trying to edit that sequence when you had such a dramatic shift, ending, of course, with the wonderful coming together?
Well, outside of No One Mourns a Wicked, it was probably the most challenging, in that I knew that if that scene didn't work, the rest of the film wouldn't work. And so, unlike No One Mourns a Wicked, where you could maybe cut out that song or maybe start the film in a different way, you can't cut out that scene. Like, they have to bond. We have to feel that relationship feels earned. And there was no way to do it than to experience the emotion, the arc of the entire scene, going from that moment where she feels so hopeful, coming into that scene, to feeling bullied and alone and unseen, and feel like that all is lost over the course of that entire scene. And then you have that one sort of gesture that by Glinda, that she's going to put herself out there and possibly make herself feel vulnerable and feel, like be made fun of, and like, I'm going to throw away all the popular notions of myself and show you that I see you, and to do that through silence and through looks and through these really intimate, calibrated gestures and this weird deconstructed dance is something. It's the closest thing I've ever cut to like a ballet in some weird way. Like I don't. There's something just really so beautiful and brave about a scene like that. And again, if that scene doesn't work, then the rest of the film, if you don't feel that relationship feels earned, you're not going to go on the rest of the journey with these characters.
And you pay that off in, of course, the tower scene at the end, where is the breakup scene. But also the musical number. What was the challenge of editing? Because you had the musical number, you had to do all the emotionality, Cynthia falling and seeing herself. That must have been kind of a very big challenging editing sequence to capture all that in one scene.
Yeah, it was terrifying. It just felt like just to, again, like trying to balance the drama and the character development and this heartbreak between these two characters, that you want them to stay together, and that that they can't stay together, and earning this moment. One of my favorite moments of the entire sequence is this moment when they're saying goodbye, and Glinda's like, says to her, like, you're freezing, and really what because Elphaba just moments before says, come with me, and she doesn't say, I can't come with you, but she says, you're freezing. And you're like, oh, such heartbreak. Like, she's basically saying, I can't come with you. So she goes and she does this gesture where she gets this blanket, drapes to come tie this thing. And then you realize that becomes the cape. And then slowly, we're starting to realize that the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West is coming together in front of our eyes at the same time as these two characters are saying goodbye to each other. And there's something so beautiful and emotional about that. And that's all in the middle of a song. Right. That we've stopped a number of times already. And so to do that, to hold the audience really firmly in your grip, and then and then say, "We've got you. Don't worry. Like we're still telling a story, and we're making you lean in and want to earn the rest of that song." And then again, when we stop it again when she's like falls out of the building, and we need that moment to build up to the next climax. And doing that again and again over Defying Gravity was extremely terrifying, but also, challenging. But then getting that right, I do think that there's something really powerful about how we sort of kept jerking back the audience and allowing them to like feel like I want it so bad, and building up the anticipation again and again.
Ari's expression when she finally sees Cynthiaerivo achieve her dream, like actually the strength, the conflicted nature of being happy for her friend actually, and sad that it's over.
I know, it's real. I mean, there's so many great looks that both Ari and Cynthia give over the entire film, and there's like that's another one where they're just like, oh my God, you are this entity. Like you're bigger than I ever imagined. Like you're the most powerful thing in Oz, and being sort of awestruck, and also like she feels good for her, but also like this heartbreak, and it's so many different emotions tied together.
So is your recommendation for all future filmmakers always cast Ari and Cynthia
Yes,
and editors?
absolutely.
So you can edit those two in any performance
Absolutely,
in the future?
100%. Yeah, just cast them, and then you're all good. Yeah, no, it's really, I've had the luxury of cutting a lot of great performances over my career, but when you get two thoroughbreds like Ari and Cynthia coming at you and delivering day after day after day of really grounded and emotional and fully developed characters. Both of them did their work, did their homework. They brought something very unique, very classic, very cinematic, which is I just don't think you don't see that every day.